The Jason Rigdon Show is recorded in Seattle, Washington in front of a live studio audience of indifferent but cute cats. You can support this podcast by giving us a rating and review on iTunes, sharing this episode on social media, or just by telling a friend about the show. You can also support the show financially on Patreon. Just visit patreon.com/Jason Rigdon.
So my name's Adam, and I'm the co-host of Future Left podcast with some guy named Casey Rogers.
You're not gonna let me introduce myself, or
no, I don't trust you to do. No,
my dog's angry about it now, so he's barking. So that's good.
Good.
Jason, what kind of show are you running here? With my dog barking in the background and everything? Very unprofessional.
It's very unprofessional. But
no, but my name's Casey, and I'm the main host of Future Left. I'm not the co-host.
So could you tell me a little bit about the show? It's Future Left.
Sure. It's called Future Left. You can find it at futureleft.org. We'd prefer you to find it at patreon.com/Future Left. But if you find it at the other one, that's fine too.
That's a lot more prestigious of a location.
But no, it's weird because the project started off, we were like interested in technology is going to change the world and everything's going to be better. And then as we did the podcast, we got radicalized for different reasons. Like we thought we were lefties. I guess we were.
I think being beaten down by our jobs made us lefties.
Yeah, that's part of it. And now we're like a little bit more ambivalent toward technology. We kind of take the position that it's like the critical thing about technology is who controls it, who owns it is like the salient question since we
when we first started out, we had our episodes organized into these buckets of topics that we would sort of populate in our Google Doc before we did an episode with articles and stuff. And now looking back on it, it's so weird to think of these things as like discrete units of discourse, because now we sort of realize that, it's all in relation to power and capital. So,
because you got about looking at 189 episodes. Is that right?
Yeah, we're
releasing
late,
190 tomorrow.
Yeah, we're late. So normally we release on Fridays. But me and Casey are getting old, so it takes us a while.
And I'm working from home and working on a master's degree at the same time, so it's slow going.
My excuse is I just have cats, and they occupy my time. Yeah.
Yeah, Adam externalizes a lot of anxieties onto his cats.
So when did you start it?
We started.
When would that be?
I guess it would have been 2016. Kind of like the first year where everything started to just continuously decline. That was 2016. So we actually kicked off the decline of everything with Future Left. Things just got worse since we've debuted.
In that case, correlation is causation.
So we've been doing it for a while. I will say I don't recommend anything like before like episode like maybe 100, although and sometimes I don't recommend anything before like episode 175. I feel like it's the weird thing about doing a podcast that I feel like I grow that's a nice way to put it, but
when you're a couple of like
2 weeks ago,
when you're a couple of like cis white dudes, you and all of your ideas are made public. You get to look back on it. It's always a very humbling experience. Humbling if you're lucky. It's humbling. But some of our earlier episodes are probably fun to listen to, but maybe not the best politics, like our Judge Dredd, or like our Dredd rather episode. Or
if you're trying to cancel us, you're gonna love our early stuff. You're gonna love it.
We'll help you cancel us if you want. Like we're all about. We're all about it.
And had you done any like podcasting before this, or was this your first kind of endeavor into this kind of weird space?
It was our first, and actually we had talked about. So me and Adam both grew up in Dallas together, and when Adam moved to DC, we had talked about, hey, maybe we could do a podcast, sort of jokingly, because that was when there was sort of like the boom in podcasting that we're still sort of in. And we were just seen as something that we could do as like an endeavor to like hang out. And that's sort of all it started out as. And then as we started doing it, there was sort of the onus to make it have some relevance to something. So that was how that developed.
And I got to ask, because people always ask me about like these podcasting courses. What kind of like training did you do before starting your show?
None.
Hilarious. Yeah. We just downloaded Audacity and then we actually had early on, we did not edit it. A friend of mine edited it, and she actually knows how to edit things. She had like the Adobe suite with like actual like software.
Like she did it for a living.
And to be clear, she was doing it for free just because she was like cool. But eventually that wasn't sustainable, as any kind of relying on free labor tends to be. So I ended up just downloading Audacity. And like an idiot at first, I was like, "Oh, I can do this. This is easy." And then, like, I ran into like one glitch and I started crying. And then, eventually you learn.
I used to we used to trade off back and forth editing. Now I do the editing usually, unless I'm unable to. Like when I moved to San Francisco recently, and then back after a year, as was the plan. So it's okay. It's okay. We didn't get run out. But
too stinky there.
But too stinky, very stinky. But I used to, when I first started editing, I would cut out every bit of silence, every every so Adam would listen to it and he'd go, pacing seems really weird. And I was overthinking it, because I was like, okay, what am I supposed to do here? And then after doing that for a while, I think the natural organic thing happened where I just, it became more mundane of a task to me. So I would do other things and I'm just listening sort of while I'm doing other stuff. And if anything jumps out at me as being wrong, that's when I edit it. So now it just sounds more conversational. I do edit our guests to make them sound a lot more articulate, and I edit out their, ums and erms and things. But with us, it's a losing battle. Adam loves to do this thing where he runs his ums into his words, so there's never a clean break. So he's like, and then I think that.
To be clear, I only do that when I know Casey's editing.
Yeah,
so I don't.
Yeah, he's real conscientious.
Yeah, I know. I used to run like a little local meetup back when you could still do that for podcasters, and you'd always have these new folks coming in. They'd always be talking about like, I just spend so much time editing out all the ums. Do you have any tips about how to control that so I don't say so many ums and uhs? And I'm like, no, I mean, I don't. Just stop editing so much. You sound like a robot.
Yeah.
I've tried so hard to cut out like my hedging and all that stuff, but it's so you run into this thing as you podcast for a while. A lot of times before an episode, you can get too in your head about structure and about pacing, but then you're not in the moment where things can happen that have more character or personality. And so we're still, I think, trying to strike that balance. I think we're probably a little bit more uptight whenever we have a guest on, because we were thinking about them and their time, but I think the
biggest challenge to me is like, especially when like podcasts like lefties, I feel like there's a lot of pressure to like, because you look up to big podcasts that are very successful, like Chapo Trap House, and they make like $1 million a year on Patreon or something. And I'm like, all right, we're going to have to be, we can try real hard on Patreon, and then maybe we'll but but you start to see like, all right, so these people, it's like, it's really emphasizing comedy. These people over here are really emphasizing like organizers. And we've never really come down on any side of like, there's some people like kind of we'll say like terms like the dirtbag left or whatever. I feel like we're definitely dirtbags. I don't, but sure. I feel like we're often at this really tension.
We were dirtbags before it was popular.
Yeah. At this intersection of like, do we want to be informative? Do we want to be entertaining?
Personality-wise, that I think it's because we're very different personality-wise that we strike that balance. Adam is very much geared towards issues and activism and like sometimes I'm like, I guess I'm the color guy where I'm like, I'm thinking about listening to it, and I want it to be punchy and have some personality. We both have obviously the other person's thing as well, but that's just predominantly like temperament wise. That's where we are. So I know that sometimes I'll have like a funny, like shitty, like fluff story that I want to do just to make fun of something or shit on something. And I'm just like, I don't know. Like, especially if it's COVID or something that's in the news. Adam's like, everyone's going to be talking about that.
Or we'll be doing an episode that, and I'll like in the middle of like talking about something, I'll be like, man, this feels like shit.
Yes. I can commit to anything. I can commit to anything, but Adam will be like, this isn't going anywhere. Yeah. And meanwhile, I'm all hyped and I'm like, what? Oh yeah. It's not.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm like, I wouldn't listen to this. I would turn this off, and I'm like, I was bail, man.
Yeah. I'm more easily contented, I think, than Adam is. Adam's very, Adam will be like willing to scrap an hour episode after. Adam used to try to do that early on when we didn't care about having a release every week. Adam would sometimes be like, I don't know, you think scrap that episode? And I'm like, what?
So you're covering, the future and technology from kind of, I don't know how to say, a different perspective than a lot of times we see. I'm in Seattle. And so I'm surrounded by people who see the future only through capitalist lenses.
Sure. Yeah, we're decidedly leftist. That's what I think. That's the most general term for.
Have you attracted any attention of some of those kind of capitalist futurism fanboys? I'm specifically thinking of all those reply guys that are always defending Elon Musk.
There are definitely people like that, especially because like me and Casey have gotten really critical of basic income over time.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in that kind of like zone think basic income is like the cure-all for all of capitalism's ill. It will fix capitalism.
Well, once you start having these capitalist tech bros getting behind basic income, you start realizing what it is to them, and that is a scrap. Let's give them this, and then maybe they'll shut up and quit asking for stuff. So it started taking on a more nefarious undertone with us, I think.
I think that's definitely how it strikes me when rich people are talking about basic income. Yeah. Like for instance, Andrew Yang. Like I kind of like something that didn't feel right about Andrew Yang from the beginning for me. I think just to back up a little bit. I mean. The question about the future and like viewing it through the lens of capitalism, I feel like like Mark Fisher would say, like it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism, and I think that's very true. And so I will say that me and Casey, in terms of like talking about a socialist future, a communist future, we're very much grasping at whatever we can get our minds to wrap our heads around, which is why I think we kind of lean into this like Control-Alt-Delete framework. When Casey, you can tell folks about.
Well, I will get into that, but I want to first mention that our sort of overriding perspective on any topic we talk about is where the balance of power lies or where it's being shifted. So in terms of like a social program, whether or not we want to shit on it or support it, depends on who's wielding it, depends on who's proposing it, it depends on who stands to benefit. And so in thinking through that, we developed on one of our episodes, I think, was it the Evan Momgren episode?
No. We did an interview with Ben Tarnoff. And I think we mentioned it in passing in the episode, the phrase Control-Alt-Delete, and then we thought about it afterwards that, hey, that lines up pretty well with these different ownership models that we looked at, like, state ownership or public ownership. Well,
and, worker ownership or, just abolition of the thing altogether. And so we called those are respectively Control, Alt, and Delete.
Yeah.
You have more to add?
I guess. I mean, no, not really. That's pretty much what Control-Alt-Delete is. I think that's sort of
our big bit. Our big bit.
Now we ask every
our previous big bit was Bezos watch, da-na-na, da-na-na, and it had a little. Yeah. And that Jeff watch, actually, we called it Jeff watch.
Yeah, we changed Jeff watch, classic.
Jeff watch, where we watch that bald vampire guy.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
And so when you're thinking about your episodes, the ones maybe we're not having a guest on, it seems like some of those you're kind of more focused on a topic. How does that kind of work out?
Sometimes
you have so many things you could talk. You have so many things you could talk about.
A lot of them are multi-topic grab bag episodes that we call them. We have We have a Google document called Rudy Toot Tootin' Shitty Shit Shootin'.
Which we've never disclosed before. I don't know why you do it here. But
because I think Adam, it was originally called Shit Shootin', and then I think we called it, I don't know, but it just got ridiculous.
Matter.
Anyway,
we need an origin story for all Google Docs.
Throughout the weeks, we, and by we, I mean mostly Adam, will put, links to articles that we come across. So often they'll often have an overriding theme. Sometimes the theme won't be apparent until we start talking about it. And then in retrospect, the episode will have had a theme. And then sometimes it's just, we talk about a bunch of these topics and, whatever we don't get to in an hour, we just leave off. And we try to self-consciously make those ones more personality driven, because, again, your long-term fans are tuning in to listen to you. They're tuning in because of you. We're not talking about stuff that no one else is talking about. We're not offering necessarily, perspectives that other people don't have. It's our perspectives, and it's how we engage and how we relate it. And so, those conversational ones usually tend to be, I think, a little bit more personable, a little more approachable.
Yeah. I mean, we used to refer because at one point we did all right, this episode is going to be about housing, and but the thing we always ran into is I know exactly 4 things, and 3 of them are not related to the podcast, right?
Yeah. So we end up spinning our wheels after 20 minutes.
we would just do the housing. Everyone should have a house. And
everyone should have a house. All right. Thanks for joining us this week.
Because we're very, I'm very ignorant. Casey's very intelligent sometimes.
I know about a lot of different things very shallowly.
Sure.
But Adam is focused like a goddamn laser. I have I'm very I have ADD. I'm always look. Adam will focus on something, and you'll have to be hey, whoa, Adam. And he's like, oh, what? He's grown a beard and there's cobwebs on him.
Sure. So I think we try to save the really in-depth episodes to when we have a guest. For that reason, is because me and Casey are really. And
oftentimes, if it's something we're interested in, but it's a very specialized topic or field, then we'll often say we should probably have someone who works, intimately with this topic on. That feels like the most responsible thing to do.
Yeah. So that's why a lot of times when it's just us, we start out calling them oh, this was just a grab bag episode, and then we realize this is probably what we should do.
Yeah.
We can kind of talk through it and learn as we go about these different things, and not pretend to be subject matter experts.
Exactly. And sometimes in the grab bag episodes, we'll talk about stuff that we realize getting into it, we're we, given the demographics we belong to, probably shouldn't act as if we are experts on this specific topic.
Yeah.
And so that's why, but we also try not to be the type of white guys who are so scared of being canceled or called out. Our thing is cancel us or call us out, and we probably won't argue with you. We'll probably be yeah, that's valid. I mean, that's the trouble that you get into, is when you start fighting with people or start trying to defend yourself when people are trying to cancel you. It's no, you're gonna fuck up. So sorry, is this swearing?
Oh yeah, no, whatever you want. Yeah.
I mean, whenever you make these kind of mistakes, you sort of have to be open to being corrected. And
to be clear, we don't think canceling is a thing.
No, it's not. It's absolutely not a thing.
Well, Mel Gibson just has that Christmas movie coming out. How is that?
Exactly.
Come on.
Yeah. I when people talk about Harvey Weinstein canceled. I'm he's a very rich guy.
He's also just he's a rapist. That's different.
That's the weird thing, is when people compare him to other people who've been canceled. It's
he didn't get canceled and sent to jail. He did many.
But Louis C.K., he's still got a career. He's still very successful. It's anyway. But and we just, I don't know, we try not to I think from the beginning, one through line is we tried not to take ourselves too seriously. We take the stuff we talk about seriously, but we try not to take our identity or some sort of leftist bona fides too seriously, because I think that's when it's more approachable. I know that most of our people who listen to us were probably preaching to the choir, but I like to think that occasionally, someone, like a libertarian, like a fucking libertarian, tunes in to hear what the left are talking about, and they're like, "Hey, these guys aren't, coming for me."
I'm a communist now.
Yeah, they're just talking, and I'm observing. That's sort of the vibe we were going for.
So I got to ask you, it appears you make album art for each episode, and it's quite striking. Who makes that? How do you?
Adam makes that. And the original idea is that it's a comic book cover.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not, that's one of the things that I did actually watch a lot of Skillshare videos about is Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop. And I still haven't, like, I'm a real dumbass when it comes to Adobe Creative Suite. I never used Adobe to edit the audio, but like, I don't know, the Illustrator can be kind of fun. And like, sometimes it's like, oh, we're gonna like make Joe Biden's head on this on a Roman senator for no reason, and then other times it's like I'm just gonna put these emojis all over the cover art.
A lot of times like now it's gotten to the point where we've streamlined it to where we try to think of the title of the episode and the art as sort of one organic whole. So they'll have something, and also that often has to do with how complicated of a task will it be. Yeah. And also we originally talked about both of us doing art at one point, but then after Adam started doing it, I was like, this has a very specific, consistent look to it that we probably for brand identity should try to hold on to.
That's how I get punished for making Casey do all the
I was about to say that was also me copping out and being like, oh man, I don't have to do this extra work. Damn, that sucks.
Yeah.
So, you are, podcasters on the left. Are there any shows I think you mentioned like, some of the big ones. Are there any shows that you really find inspiration from, or you just like listen to like every episode?
I never miss an episode of the Trillbilly Workers Party.
I love Trillbilly, yeah.
A Kentucky-based podcast. I never miss Beep Beep Lettuce. We recently interviewed Bryn from Beep Beep Lettuce. It was a good time. I listen to a lot of Chapo. And I like them. I also really like what's Jake Flores' podcast? We interviewed him too.
Is that Why You No?
Why You Mad?
Why You Mad is his side, but the one he does with
Pod Damn America.
Pod Damn America, yeah. Okay. That starts out with the amazing Jeremiah Wright.
Yeah. I actually been listening to more Why You Mad lately though, because like it's funny because their conversations are very political, but they're all like within the world of like stand-up comedy,
right.
which is really fascinating.
I on the other hand, I don't listen to as much political content as Adam does. I have to admit that tends to be all Adam listens to. I occasionally listen to WTF with Mark Maron. That's a classic one. I listen to a lot of My Brother and Me. I listen to a lot of light stuff, just sort of like because life is like miserable, especially right now, and so like I like to keep it from being heavy. I listen to a lot of
I make him like talk about the looming collapse of the United States and the rise of fascism every week. Yeah. So for like a palate cleanser, he needs like.
And then I go and listen to the Simpsons Show, or other. I listen to a lot of the Max Fun stuff. If I'm honest, but then like at the top of mine, I'm looking at right now. Like I listen to BP Lettuce all the time. Trillbillies, like Adam said, Pod Damn America. Yeah, Benjamin Dixon show. We have Benjamin Dixon on as a guest. I really like his show. So, yeah.
But you both are actual podcast listeners. I know sometimes when I talk to podcasters, they don't listen to podcasts that much. And I think that the people that do listen a lot, their shows just sound better. If that makes sense.
It absolutely makes sense. I know it got better once. I initially was one of those people who didn't listen to a lot of podcasts. I've always had a hard time bringing new media into my life. I've never been the type of person that goes looking for it. I've always been the type of person that has always seemed to find things that are meaningful just organically. And so I got to where I trusted that. But after we started podcasting and I started like, getting into doing it more and wanting to listen and hear how other people were doing things. Then I sort of started saying, and initially it may sound weird. I didn't really know how to engage with podcasts.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I didn't listen to podcasts before we launched a podcast.
Yeah.
Actually, the funny thing is, in my main experience with like dumb guys talking in audio only context was like talk radio, because I'm a sicko. I used to make
God, Jason,
drive around
Adam,
listen to conservative talk radio all day.
We used to, when we lived in Dallas still, we would drive around and Adam would be listening to Michael Savage, Dennis Prager, and he had like this smug, like knowing look on his face, like just loving hearing how stupid they were. Meanwhile, I'm fuming and like bleeding from the nose. I'm like, this motherfucker, Adam.
I enjoy the sensation of being very angry for some, like over politics. It's like everyone was really like, oh, this country, it's so sad about after the first presidential debate. To me, is the best debate I've ever fucking seen. It's my favorite thing in the world.
But it's not because you're angry. It's like, I honestly think I think Adam watches this stuff like people watch The Room, where it's like a smug sense of superiority, where it's like, oh, this movie's great. It's not great. Oh my, it's so good. Oh, I'm so much better than Tommy Wiseau. But he's a great American.
I will say I am better than Michael Savage. I don't doubt that.
Well, I mean, that's, you know, Michael.
He's probably
Jason, do you know Michael Savage? His son owns Rockstar Energy.
Yep. Yeah, I used to be. I was one of those people. I listened to him all the time. Even, I mean, I didn't believe in his stuff, but I mean, back when I was commuting a lot, you know, I'd be listening to all those AM guys.
Like listen to the Enemy. Yeah.
Yeah, know what they're thinking, because I mean,
Adam's dad calls him Dr. Savage. And
Does he really?
Yeah, your dad. You heard your dad say.
My dad doesn't call him Dr. Savage. That's ridiculous.
Your dad does call him Dr. Savage.
No.
He used to. Whenever we'd go over to your house to play music, he'd be like, "He's like, what's up, liberals? Y'all listen to Dr. Savage?"
My dad has never said those words. My dad is very conservative. He listens to Michael Savage. I don't think he's ever referred to him as Dr. Savage. That's insane. That's next level.
That's what listeners to Michael Savage call him, Dr. Savage. They do. Because he's a doctor of like, what is it?
Like
it's like a nutritionist or something.
It's botanical. No, it's like botanical medicine or something.
Not that there's anything wrong with botany or gardening. I didn't mean to be like, fuck gardeners. I just fuck this one gardener in particular. That's all.
Not a gardener. He's got a PhD in. Anyway, I'm defending Michael Savage's credentials.
Talking Michael Savage, I mean, I think Mark Levin is the one that I also liked.
Oh, geez. He's local to Dallas, isn't he, Adam?
I don't know.
Isn't Mark Levin the guy you called into that one day? Who is that? So Adam has a bachelor's degree in Middle Eastern politics, don't you? Or no, you have a master's degree in Middle Eastern politics. And so one time, this guy on the radio's conservative guy in Dallas was talking about like
I don't remember that guy's name.
Why Muslims want to kill us so bad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And Adam called in just to really put it in this guy's ass. And he got put on hold forever. I didn't mean to say that. I didn't.
That was a weird metaphor.
I meant put it in his patoot, but I think that also means the same thing.
Yeah.
Which is probably problematic. But he got put on hold for like 20 minutes, and Adam finally hung up. And when the guy came back on, he was like, "We had an Islamic scholar calling in, but like a coward, of course, he runs away." And you're like, "God damn it!"
No, like the way that I remember it is we called in, and I was on the phone. I was on hold for a very long time, but also the guy who came on before me said the thing that I was going to say. And but like the weird thing is he did say that it was an Islamic scholar, but he made it seem like I was an Islamic scholar who was like afraid to like tell the truth on the radio.
Exactly.
You know?
And he said when we come back, I'll tell you why they're afraid. And we were like, God damn it, we fueled him.
Yeah, I'm kind of jealous of those call-in radio guys, you know, because they just have people calling in, just giving them all
engagement,
this free content and stuff.
Like Sam Cedar, I enjoy it when he does stuff like that and like fields those questions.
Oh, I don't. No, he's saying he's jealous that we don't. He's not saying, oh, it's cool when those guys do it.
Oh,
you've got a weird admiration for these guys, Adam. You've got a weird admiration for these guys. No, but I wish we had that level of engagement. Like I wish so much that, like, especially on social media, and this is something. Maybe it's because of the nature of the medium where it's sort of passive, where people are sort of used to that sort of relationship. And so they're not as engaging, but like we want like our audience to give us, argue with us, give us ideas for.
Part of it is that we're very lazy about social media. I like look at my RSS feed subscriber numbers and I'm like, everything's fine. And I just will forget to post the Facebook link or whatever. We go like 10 episodes at a time without mentioning we have a Patreon. We're very bad at marketing the podcast into something.
Well, it's because we're socialists. It's like we're shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah. There's that whole kind of uncomfortableness with kind of self-promotion sometimes, you know?
Definitely.
Well, and I think
we're
that
both
also comes
kind of
from
person.
I think that also comes from like growing up working class in the South as well, where it's like there's a lot of not explicitly, but there's a lot of built in like you want to be modest and you want to be self-effacing. You don't want to take yourself too seriously. You don't want to make too big a deal of yourself. And so you grow up with, you don't know how to thread that needle. You just completely avoid it altogether. And yeah.
Well, we're just about out of time, so I would like you to plug yourself. Where can people find more information about your show?
You can find pretty much everything you need to know at futureleft.org. You can support us on patreon.com/futureleft. We are on Twitter and Facebook. You just type in the words future and left. There is actually some like British band called Future of the Left. Fuckers. No, I'm just kidding. But tosses, that's what I meant. But no.
Tossers?
Yeah. Is that a bad thing? Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
We'll let Jason find out.
Yeah. Anyway, I tried to make a joke and I fucked up. Anyway, canceled again. But no,
canceled again.
Future left. Yeah, and share. We always tell people if you can't give on Patreon, just share the thing with a friend of yours. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, Jason, make sure you share. Make sure you get the word out for us, okay, bud?
Sure.
If I said anything that was offensive, just feel free to email Casey at futureleft.org. You can reach him there.
You should have said Adam at Casey@futureleft.org.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate the show too. Cool. It's great.
Well, thank you for having us on. We appreciate that.
If you like the Jason Rigdon Show, would you please consider giving us a rating and review on iTunes?
So usually the way I start is by folks introducing themselves. Do you want to just go one by one introducing yourselves, or how would you like to handle that?
Yeah, let's just do a round robin. Sounds
cool.
Good.
Yeah. Just go right ahead whenever you're ready. If you need some more time, I'm not sure if everybody's settled yet. I just thought I'd waste some time with the plan.
I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Well, Jake, why don't you go first because you're like the editor. You kind of brought this whole thing together. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Jake Slingland. We're all kind of co-editors on it. We're 4 of the 6 founders. But I kind of simultaneously thought of this idea at the same time as Jeremy. We'll be talking a bit in a second. I do a lot of I send all the art to our great printers, Pacific Publishing in Seattle, and do a lot of that behind the scenes stuff besides grinding out my pages. I got some other fun stuff too, but yeah, I'll pass the mic.
Cool. I'm Jeremy Talamontes, as Jake just mentioned. Basically, we met through a mutual friend who I grew up with, and kind of called him the same day about doing I've just been doing comedy for the past 8 years. I used to run a show where we critiqued thrift store paintings. We'd have comedians make fun of it. Comedy's a little, I'm out of work in that sense, so I've just been drawing, and my brother and I do the Muscle Core is kind of our flagship title, and we love Sunday Funnies, so that's our contribution to Scarfff is the little funny section where we just do a bunch of comic strips. And if anyone else wants to go.
I'm Justin Talamontes, Jeremy's brother. Yeah, we work on the Muscle Core together. I pencil and do layouts. He mostly inks and colors, and we kind of co-write it. It's a very loosey-goosey Marvel style process. As you mentioned, we're editors of the Funnies insert in Scarfff. So basically, we just curate other people's dope comic strips in conjunction with our own and cram it all together and hope that everybody's entertained. Yeah.
Nice. I love the Funnies, man. I love the way that's coming together.
Thank you.
I'm Kyle. I'm originally from the East Coast, was living in Seattle. That's where I hooked up with all these guys, just kind of like right place at the right time. One of the other contributors, Devin, I think really kind of connected the dots between all of us.
AKA Bummer Comics, just
Nice.
And I did the cover, and I mostly do like little one-page comics, so doing Scarfff really kind of broke me out of my mold. It's an awesome challenge.
I'd agree with that. I think that we all kind of got pushed a little bit. This is the most eyes I've ever had on my work. So like, I think we all we got elevated in a sense.
Same.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, Justin, we talked about this, but like doing the first issue kind of felt like just like a whack-a-mole, kind of like poking your head into professionalism a little bit, just getting smashed over the head, and it was pretty tough. But
Smackdown.
Yeah, the second two have been we're getting better and more efficient, and I think it's still tough, but it's fun and rewarding.
So how do you describe Scarfff to someone that's never seen it before, doesn't know anything about it?
You can't. It's just an experience.
Good question.
I start with not for kids. Like, don't give this to your kid.
Yeah, not
Yes, right up like that.
Underground Comics. It's a newspaper style comic, broadsheet, folds open. It's big, 11 by 17 art, and we got essentially 4 2-color pages, and then the rest is black and white, and it's real readable and disposable, and it's a fun, ephemeral way, so for people to ingest comics and for us to get our comics out into the world, and it's free.
Yeah, so that's what I was gonna say. I just tell them it's free, and I always feel weird about selling my comics, so I always say, hey, here's a free little comic some buddies in Seattle put together, and that way I'm not like, here's my comic, read it, and people are like, all right. So I always tell them, yeah.
For me, it's like a great example of just what comics can be. Whereas, like, if you stick with mostly Marvel or DC, and don't get me wrong, I've got my love for those too, but it's like you get so much more variety when you get these kind of interesting up-and-coming artists. And I think that Scarff's really good about bringing people into the fold. Like, Jake's been really good about reaching out to some, like, established figureheads in the Seattle community. We're always looking for interesting new cartoonists, so...
Yeah, it's kind of bringing people together who are already working hard, people who are like kind of doing all their comics and don't fully know what to do with it. I feel like that was where I was at. And then so we kind of, like Justin says, smash them together and see what happens.
They're obviously committed. We definitely found people who are putting stuff out, and we can count on them to bring pages every time. Like,
yeah.
The passion is a big piece of the puzzle.
So how did this start? Like, you come with the idea, and how did you get people to buy into it?
Oh man, I got to give credit to Dune in Seattle and Mark Palm and Max Klopfelter 100%. They Mark Palm was running Dune, still running it kind of online now, which is was a drink and draw up at Cafe Racer, where the coolest, like literally, Seattle has amazing cartoonists, and everybody would just come to, like, amazing people would come together of all skill levels. The kids from high school and younger to people as experienced as David Lasky would be showing up once a month to put together the zine. Basically show up and draw from like 6 o'clock until 11 o'clock at night, and then give your page to Mark with $5. He turns around and makes a zine out of it. And then we all get to like revel in our cool stuff. And that's like just for us. And that whole experience brought me together with Devin and Kyle, and that connected me to everybody else. And on top of that, those two guys, Mark Palm and Max Klopfelter, and then a handful of other super talented Seattle cartoonists, like Nartoons, for instance, were doing a paper back in the day called The Intruder, which just through kind of like, I'm always asking people, like, how did you get a little ahead? How did you make a connection? How do you do this thing in comics? Because I've really been working at trying to figure out an angle to get my art to people for years and years and years now. And they were really open about sharing how to do it. And basically I bought Mark Palm a beer one time and just picked his brain about like his journey. And he told me about how easy it was actually to do one of these papers. Like, really, it's very accessible for about like, it costs each of the artists, us included, $50 a page, to throw this thing together every 3 months. And then we get, like some more money coming in, it can help. But like, basically that's all it takes, that and like being consistent, and there you go. So I kind of, that's what really like gave me the germ of the idea. And then, I don't know, the confidence built up. And so one day I hit up my friend Bummer Comics, and so did Jeremy.
Yeah. So my first inkling of like the paper was, I was like 2019. I just kind of knew 2020 it's an election year. People were just going to be like completely inundated with news. And I just knew it was going to be a tough year kind of. So I was like, well, we should do a newspaper. We should insert ourselves into news. I imagine this being in like the newsstands, and kind of sneaking it into those free ones. And like, so we would do the funnies, rather like kind of the part of the newspaper that I read, and me and Justin used to fight over as kids, kind of, because I would read too slow. And, you got to get to Calvin and Hobbes and all the good shit that was entertaining. So, years later, we're still fighting over the comics and yelling at each other and, and then basically, so I hit up Devin with that idea because I grew up with him in San Jose, and he's just one of the most prolific dudes I know, who's constantly drawing and making things happen and putting stuff out there. So he was like kind of like the obvious go-to to call about, I want to make some comic strips, and I love Devin's stuff. So I hit him up and threw it together.
I think it's kind of funny. Jeremy originally floated the idea to me. I was like, let's make this kind of like newspaper comic stream. Let's get it out to people to cheer them up, all this. And I was like, yeah, okay, Jeremy. Like, as soon as we, like we're barely keeping up with our musclecore pages, like week to week. And I didn't really buy into the idea. And we ended up taking a trip to Seattle and crashing on Bummer Comics' couch. That's where I met Jake and Kyle and Gina. And I don't know, their enthusiasm for the thing got me. We were just sitting around on the couch just drawing. And I was like, I'm in. This is it. And I got really psyched about it. And we came back to San Francisco, where I was living at the time with Jeremy. And we just started churning out. Well, first we procrastinated. Then we started churning out pages.
I remember somebody missing a deadline this time around, actually.
Real art can't be contained by
time. Yeah, what does time mean,
Nothing anymore.
Especially now.
So when exactly did this start? Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, it's one thing, like, when you have an idea and you can't quite explain it to someone. Like, I was trying to tell Justin, and like, because I could just see it. And in the first issue we did, the letterhead for the funnies I did was like a vision I had, kind of. I mean, and I don't know that I completely pulled it off, but I did it to the best of my ability at that time. And I just remember thinking, if I didn't get a newspaper comic strip going, I was kicking myself in the ass. Like, you should just quit doing comics if you can't put something out in the year 2020, And now we have 3.
When was our first one? Came out in January 2020, right? Was that when we dropped that? We had a party at the Fantagraphics bookstore. Big shout out to Larry over there for letting us do that. And
he put up,
he's a big supporter.
Sorry, but you were going to ask another question.
I was just wondering, I think you got to it, when exactly it started. And you said it comes out every 3 months?
Oh, that's right. Yep, it's quarterly.
Yeah, so 4 times a year. It comes out every 3 months,
And how do people get it?
Variety of ways.
Yeah.
It used to be a lot easier because we were just running it around town. Like we were in San Francisco, these guys were in Seattle, and like we just put them where we could. But Corona has kind of forced us to get a little bit more agile, I guess. I think it has a broader distribution now. Maybe you want to.
It does. Yeah. I can speak to that a little bit. Originally our whole distribution model was just like the other Seattle newspaper comics I mentioned, like Hair Flip and Thick as Thieves and The Intruder. Whereas like we'd take it to bars, dispensaries, comic shops, and then like fling it around any old place that with like a surface and where people would leave ephemeral stuff. But now no one wants to touch anything in public. It will kill you. So now we actually have done a lot more mail order. People can hit us up directly and send us $2 through PayPal for shipping, and we'll send it out to them. or our Patreon. People can subscribe through that for as cheap as like a $1.15 a month. And we've actually gotten some great contact with a few really cool independent comic shops around the country now. So we've got it in Fantagraphics. Obviously, like I said, they're a big supporter, and then also up at Push Pull in Seattle, up in Ballard. We got it over at Phoenix in Cap Hill. They're very nice. They took a nice little stack, and then down in San Francisco, there's a great shop called Silver Sprocket. We just mailed them 100 copies of issue 3 directly from our publisher, our printer, as well as Floating World Comics down in Portland, and then Quimby's out in Chicago, and then a whole bunch went out to New Jersey. So our team out there on the West Coast, Mr. Kyle Killeen, is doing some distribution for us out there too.
Yeah, and I also Mission Comics was really cool artist who's in this issue, did a strip for us, and the fun is this one, he works at Mission Comics, and they have such a great independent shelf there, and so Scarfff was sitting there, he took some. I was also working at
he got 100 too. Like, he's a big supporter. We did a party in San Francisco with Mission Comics as well. So yeah, thanks for remembering that, Jeremy. Big shout out.
And I was going to shout out the shop I work at, which is near and dear to my heart, Comics Experience Outpost. I'm working there, right? So lately we've been doing like curbside pickup and stuff. And it's like, hey, you want some free stuff with the comics you just bought? So then I'll ask people if they want me to stuff it in the bag,
Kyle, I've never asked you this before, but like, as our East Coast distributor, like, did you have to like work with the mob, or was there any sort of grease in the wheels or anything like that? Or
I'm not at liberty exactly to say.
It's recording, Justin.
You guys get the secrets? Coconut, okay?
Just for the record, Kyle winks into the camera.
I've mostly been reaching out to places in Philly, DC, and New York, but haven't really set up a chance to go in yet. But Desert Island Comics in Brooklyn, they always push our stuff big time. Store's rad.
And what kind of reactions have you gotten from readers?
Disgust, mostly.
I think it definitely harkens back to the days of the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers and Zap Comics, and people miss that. They miss that kind of willing to see an artist who's just going to do anything. You never know what you're going to see in an issue of Scarfff, and I think people are psyched on that.
Yeah, I always get excited. I used to kind of look down on it, but the idea of low art, I love just that stuff that is, you reproduce it and just give it to as many people, and it kind of, puts a smile on a face, and people get free stuff, and then it's actually quality content and like amazing art. People enjoy that.
I feel like people are excited. There's certainly a lot of other cartoonists, from us just having an Instagram account and doing some stuff on Facebook, have really been drawn in. So, at the very least, I feel like we get to experience this like broader community of creative people, which is really nice. And then, some of the people that aren't cartoonists stumble upon it and seem to have a lot of fun with it too.
Yeah, we've gotten a little bit of love from some of our heroes. Noah Skyber was very kind to us in the comments, and there was the Cartoonist Kayfabe podcast. They've liked our stuff a few times, so it's very validating for people that we look up to say hey, you guys are doing all right. And
Farrell Dahl,
I enjoy
Portland too.
Yeah, we sent a copy out for review to some YouTube channel. And
they requested it. I wanted to say for the record, they requested a copy from us.
But they didn't know what to do with it. They were just and it's I wasn't even sure they read it, to be honest.
They literally lifted it up and said, unreviewable. Their whole review was unreviewable.
Best holding it I could ever ask for. Best review I could ever ask for.
Yeah, you could totally put that a positive spin on that. It's unreviewable, or it sounds terrible.
Obscure Florida podcast says unreviewable.
It's pretty great.
It's not that far outside of what you would expect from, a comedy I'm sorry, not a podcast, a comedy comic, right? It's just very adult. And different.
I think they just must not have much of this stuff over where they record in Florida.
Yeah, that could be.
I don't know. As I was saying earlier, like a lot of times comics is dominated by those sort of big two.
Yeah.
Where you've got, like a huge chunk of that market is just superheroes, like spandex and tights. And so it's like, I think that there's always going to be a little bit of like puzzlement when you like have something that's kind of different. And so I kind of enjoy that it's different and that people don't always know what to make of it.
Yeah, I mean, people are definitely come in and they want the certain brands on their comic, like Marvel or DC, and nothing against that. It's awesome stuff too. But I always get excited when I like kind of come across someone who's into this kind of stuff, because then there is that spark. And like you were talking about for Freak Brothers and stuff, Kyle. Like, yeah, it's like you because the people who are into this that are the same, like we're into it. We're people who are into it, So we're gonna enjoy talking to those people who like the weird kind of underground stuff.
Yeah, we're furry Freak Brothers.
In a sense, we are.
It's true.
So you produce very adult content. Are there any kind of rules that you've made for yourselves about what's like kind of what's too much?
Well,
corpse messing with corpses, I think we've decided was too much.
Yeah. Someone tried to submit something to us on Instagram that was a hard no. Yeah, unsolicited.
But it was kind of done beautifully in a weird. It was creepy and it was disturbing, and I was like, yeah, it was just one of those things that's too much.
There was a part that got rapey that I was like, nope, sorry, not gonna, I can't publish that. And anything that would be like, we're not going to put, like, certainly not going to touch anything that feels like racist or defamatory or derogatory towards any groups like that. Like that's a hard no.
I think it can kind of be summed up as like, we don't want to punch down kind of. It's like, we don't want to be belittled. Like we can have Mitch McConnell on the cover getting choked out, like autoerotic asphyxiation. That's fine. But like, I don't know. I don't want to be seen.
It is a weird way of finding your kind of boundaries and what you want to do, because like a lot of us kind of shied away from this orgy issue, and then once we were told like that's what we're doing, it's like, well, then let's really fucking do it. You can't, but at the same time, I don't feel like typically I'd try and make comics that are like over the top, disgusting or raunchy or dirty or vile. I'm just trying to joke around and
It's true. The orgies, so we came to the orgies topic via a raffle we did at our first party. We just kind of said to everybody at Fanagraphics that showed up, throw an idea in this bucket, and if we pull your thing out, it'll be our topic for our next issue, and we'll give you a bunch of our comics that we made, because we all make our own comics, on our own. And the first one we pulled out was orgies, and I'll tell you, we all kind of swallowed hard for a second. Yeah, the record skipped, and because it's just not in our wheelhouse normally. So we drew a second one, and that's why the second issue actually wound up being Demon Cats, which wound up being pretty fun. But we were like, okay, we can't shy away from this, and we came around, and it really pushed us to some interesting places, to be honest.
Yeah, it's kind of not shying away from stuff, but there's certain areas where it's like, through just watching Society, you're kind of like, I don't want to run bullheadedly into that arena, and I've definitely told, plenty of bad jokes, but I feel like I'm better at editing the jokes and what I want to put in the final product. So it is a little more doesn't distract from the reader or kind of piss them off, because that's not the goal, but yeah, kind of.
The adults only, not for kids, that's really just our way of covering our ass, so that if we do say something or show something that's not appropriate for certain ages, they're not supposed to read it anyways. But I don't think that our sensibilities lean towards really disgusting or vile or adult, really, other than maybe some casual drug use in our work. A little bit of violence.
Yeah, some swearing.
Yeah, some swearing. Okay, yeah. So you know what? Maybe
Hold on.
So you said you've had some submissions. Where do you find the artists that you put in here? I mean, your work is in here, obviously, but I think there's some other folks too, right?
Issue 3 is the first one. Well, besides the Funnies, the Funnies has actually had some outside artists from the jump, I believe. issue 3 is the first one where we gave some new people full pages. And it's kind of been the same way we all got together. Some people we knew personally, like there's a guy we knew from Dune, actually a Seattle fella. And then the other guys, I know Justin and Jeremy knew from down in the San Francisco scene predominantly.
Yeah, just dudes that we knew were producing awesome stuff, and kind of just tapped them on the shoulder, like, you're making dope comics anyways if you want to throw in a page or two.
And I know Kyle brought in at Sad Boy Angry Man, this great guy Frank, to do one that turned out brilliant. And didn't you guys meet on Instagram? That started there.
Absolutely.
So we've met people via Instagram too, whose stuff we just really appreciate, who are going to be in future issues. So it's kind of a melange.
It's a little bit easier now to find people, because I think when the idea was first being born, we didn't have anything to show anyone. You're like, hey, do you want to put $50 up to be in this thing that hasn't existed yet?
Yeah.
So now it's a little bit easier because we have 3 issues under our belt, and we have we have distribution across the country. And so it's a little bit more of there's incentive,
Kind of, proof of concept that people can be like, okay, it's actually worth my time,
So do you have any advice for folks that are just, maybe they want to make a comic, maybe not a physical one like you've made, but actually just putting pen to paper?
That's exactly it, man.
That's a big part of it. Yeah.
Just do it. Draw so many terrible comics that you don't have room in your house for it,
Yeah. I think, go ahead.
I was just saying, trying to cut out all the bad habits, the little bullshit that you do, and don't be too hard on yourself. But if you can slowly whittle away these distracting things, my thing is Tetris. I could play it all day and never get a comic done. So it's playing less Tetris, drawing more characters and little zany doodles.
And even bad stuff. I think people get too caught up in it's got to be perfect. But Justin mentioned cartoonist kayfabe a little bit ago, and something that Ed Piskor on there likes to say a lot is you got to get 10,000 pages in, or 1,000 pages. This is an incredibly large amount of drawn comic pages before you're even ready, before you're at any kind of level where you really want to put stuff out, or where you're at you could say you have mastered it, the craft to any extent. So just grind away.
Yeah, and don't be too. Oh, sorry, is someone going to say something?
Oh, just I sort of have this weird belief that everybody's got really good drawings and really bad drawings inside of them, and you just kind of have to keep drawing, and the bad drawings will come out, but eventually it's almost like one of those sticker machines that you put the quarters in, you just keep jamming it in there, and finally something good will come out, and you're like, look, see, everybody look at this.
Yeah, you're going to hit, and that's the one you promote.
And
well,
then,
you used to do... You go. Big brother.
Just don't get too caught up in the materials. I used to think I need a Wacom tablet to make tools, or I need this special pencil or pen. And it's all you need is a notebook, piece of paper, and a pencil, and you can do it, Yeah,
you can do it on anything. Yeah, don't be too precious, and don't be experimental, and be risky kind of. And that doesn't mean that can mean anything, as long as you're taking risks and experimenting and trying something. If you fail, you at least have a better idea of what that should look like, and you're just that much closer.
And make stuff too, print it up, do little mini one-pager comics over an A4 sheet of paper folded up. Those are so fast, so easy to do. You can make one, take it to Kinko's, run off 100 of them. There you go.
It gives you it gives you a great understanding of what goes on. Some of the zines Jess and I were making, you learn where the mess ups are and where the stumbling blocks are. And now if you know how a comic is produced physically, then you can draw inside of that better, and
find friends like Dune, man. Dune really helped me work on my craft, meet interesting people, gave me access to people that knew how to do it.
Well, I gotta say, as a fan, as when I saw that, a new issue is being mailed out, I'm going down to my mailbox, checking, waiting for it. So I really, really appreciate your work. It is fantastic. And it's, for me, it reminds me of a time that I didn't really experience of this kind of underground comic thing. Like, I remember I'd always hear people talk about these things, but I never actually saw one. Now I have one in my hands right now.
Cool.
Yeah,
thank you.
It's kind of the ebb and flow of those things, because I remember thinking when we got the first one done, I was like, man, we are so original and brilliant. And then like I met a dude in a comic shop who was really awesome, but he handed me a stack of years worth of newspaper style comics he was doing in the 90s. It's called The Mad Happies. And I was like, it kind of humbled me being like, you're not so original, but you're part of something bigger.
Yeah.
And that felt good in itself. It was just a different feeling. But
those comics were monthly too. The Mad Happies.
Without technology and stuff. So it's like,
I was that's what I want to get with Scarfff, but comic.
Yeah, it comes and goes.
Well, we're just about out of time here. Does anybody have any final thoughts for the listeners?
Subscribe to the Patreon. Check our stuff out on Instagram at Scarfff Comics. That's all from. I love you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, one more time. Where can people find more information about you folks and your amazing comics?
Go to Instagram, just at Scarfff Comics. Look us up, and we do a pretty good job of tagging ourselves and throwing all of our work in there. And so you can just follow up individually and check out stuff we're drawing currently. And we'll tell you how we can put it in your hands. Shoot us a message, ask for a few issues. We'll gladly mail it.
Yeah, we're also, let's see, it's a Scarfff Comic, no S, at gmail.com if you want to send us an email. We're on Patreon. You can link through the Instagram. I'm at jake.slingland if you want to check out my personal stuff. Electric Heart Comics, that's Kyle, at Electric Heart Comics. To link up with him. We got at the Toon Goon for our host of the most, Jeremy. You got Brainspace Comics for Justin, at Brainspace Comics.
and Bummer Comics for Devin. And what is Gina's now? She's the other founding member.
Maldita.soy. At Maldita.soy is one of our other founding members. Two of the most important people are very shy and don't want to do this kind of stuff. But they're also two of the most talented people. I got to give it up to Maldita. Her stuff is so brilliant. She did the awesome intro page and the first page in our third issue, and it's like poetic loveliness that the rest of the issue is not.
Well, try to have all those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you so much for making this just awesome thing.
Dude,
thanks for having us.
Thank you.
This was a blast. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Jason Rigdon Show. We would love to hear from you. Please leave us a message on our voicemail line at 425-835-2766.
Sure, yeah. So I am the operator of the Bad HIPPA Takes on Twitter. And the purpose of the account is really to identify misinformation about the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, which, if you look at my Twitter handle, you'll see is misspelled intentionally. I do that as a nod to all of the rampant misspelling of the name of the act.
Yeah, I don't think that there is. I mean, right now with this pandemic, there might not be anything that's like kind of more misunderstood. I know people for a while have been just kind of talking about HIPAA in different ways. What kind of inspired you to make this account?
What caught my attention initially was another account that's similar called Bad Legal Takes that chronicles a number of, things that people say on the internet about the law that aren't necessarily so. And at the same time, this was back in May, the pandemic was in full force, and I saw a misinformation campaign, or what I identified as a misinformation campaign, directed at people who might not want to wear masks in public. And the, goal of this this particular group that is publishing this stuff, where do I put this? I'm actually not even sure what their goal is, but their approach has been to publish these spurious cards that say things like, under HIPAA, I'm not required to tell you my health reasons for not wearing a mask, and go on to make claims about all sorts of fines and things like that, and in a way to seem threatening to, the 16-year-old kid that's trying to check you out at the grocery store. So it's a very kind of lopsided, abusive thing that I saw happening that bothered me.
Yeah, I think we saw quite a few of those videos of some of those people yelling and screaming. And yeah, I think they were selling those cards for a little while. I don't know if they still are. I mean, you can just print them yourself, but it was some group, I believe, that was selling them. Of course, there's always some way of someone making money at the very bottom of a lot of these conspiracy theories.
Yes, I did see that. There's one person I sort of have identified and called out publicly as maybe a ringleader of this organization or this group, this person, Lenka Coloma. She's based out of Southern California somewhere. And she does appear to run, a couple of Facebook groups and, some other accounts that promote this idea that, you don't have to wear masks if you don't want to, and that you should actively resist this and use their cards to do so.
And I suppose we should back up just a little bit. Would you mind, if you can, explaining what HIPAA actually is?
Sure. So, HIPAA is a law that was passed back in 1996. Its objective, it had several objectives. The primary one that I focus on in the account is about the privacy rule that's meant to protect patient privacy, the privacy of your protected health information, aka PHI. But, it had other objectives, making insurance portable. So if you leave your employer, you don't necessarily have to lose your plan. Making, the transfer of information mandatory, so that if I do move from one physician to another, they're required to transfer my records if I request that they do so, and a number of other things. But the privacy rule seems to be the main thing that people focus on and greatly misunderstand.
What do you think is, from what you've seen, what do you think is like kind of the greatest misunderstanding of what it is?
The most blatant one is that somehow HIPAA is a rule that prevents people from asking you things about your health. That's the basis upon which those cards were made. They said, well, you can't ask me because of HIPAA. Well, when in actual fact, HIPAA's regulation applies to healthcare providers, health insurance plans, business associates of those entities, a category of people called covered entities. And all it does is it says they can't disclose your protected health information without your written authorization. And so people have it kind of backwards, that it means that you're protected from being asked, when you're really protected from people talking about you without your permission.
Of talking about people's health, one thing that has come up recently is, the president has been diagnosed with COVID, and there's a lot of really weird COVID takes or HIPAA takes about his COVID treatment and diagnosis.
Yeah, that's true. This all happened very recently, and so yesterday was a very busy day for me. Responding to a number of these claims on Twitter, and it was. I guess the main thing that people latched onto was this idea that if a physician refuses to reveal some health information about the president, that the public has a right to know. And that's outside the scope of what HIPAA has anything to do with, other than the prevention of that physician from disclosing the information without the president's permission. And that's really what Conley said in his press conference, that there were HIPAA regulations that prevented him from disclosing certain details. And I'm not a public policy expert. I'm not a regulatory expert. And so, I don't necessarily feel the need to weigh in on whether the public does indeed have a right to know about certain aspects of the president's treatment or his medical condition. I think that you could look at examples through history of other presidents who've had medical problems and say, well, did it matter to their ability to run the country? And, in some cases, maybe they did. You could think about the later years of the Reagan presidency and his, apparent decline during that time. And maybe that was something that the public should have been able to know about. But other things, if somebody, a president has a non-life-threatening medical condition that is being managed by their physician, I don't necessarily think it's the public's right to know about that. Some things are private for a reason.
So you've been doing this since I think May. Where do you find all these amazing takes?
Some of them are forwarded to me by other people who have followed my account. Some of them I just do a quick search for every once in a while. If I've got a few free minutes to go take a break and have a laugh, I just search for the misspelling of HIPAA on Twitter or elsewhere sometimes, and there will be all manner of things that come up.
Yeah, the misspelling seems to be like a really, really common motif. And I'm kind of reminded of like the weird punctuation you see in some of these posts also.
I don't know that I'm thinking of an example of that.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I often see some of these strange posts. They're usually kind of in the fringe. And one example was like the multiple periods or the multiple commas, or just there's always some strange kind of punctuation. And it's these kind of strange mistakes that I'm always wondering, where are these coming from? But a lot of your takes seem like they're coming from real people. It's not necessarily folks maybe spreading disinformation. I mean, maybe they are, but it's not the classical, what we remember from maybe 2016 with so many of those Russian bot accounts.
Yeah, I've wondered about that myself, because some of the takes are so similar and so similarly incorrect and use a lot of matching language across different accounts that I do, or I have suspected that there were some actors publishing particular talking points that were being used, by some of these accounts. I never found any specific evidence to support that theory. There was definitely a strong correlation with QAnon followers posting about this HIPAA misinformation. And so that felt like there was some potentially organized activity occurring. But again, it wasn't something that I ever went and did any deep research on.
And have you had any kind of bad reactions? Sometimes when we're trying to debunk some of this stuff, people just don't, they don't accept it graciously or say you're right. They think you're somehow an enemy. That's
true. One of the things that happens a lot that I'm eternally amused by is the accusations that I am both a right-wing nut job and a left-wing nut job, depending on who the audience is. Because in the cases where you've got perhaps people that would like for President Trump's health information to be disclosed, well, then if I'm supporting the idea that they're private, well, I must be a Trump supporter and I must be a right-wing nut job of some kind. And conversely, when you hear things about the protection of, say, Vice President Biden's health information regarding his, potential cognitive decline or whatever other issues he may be having, then obviously I must be a left-wing nut job and a Biden supporter. And so you get it from both sides, but my aim is really only to spread the truth.
Well, if the conspiracies were true, then you could cash the check from Russia and from George Soros, and you'd be kind of double dipping a little bit.
That would be fantastic if I could figure out how to make deals with those gentlemen. If you have contact information, maybe for Putin and Soros, I could probably set up a couple of separate bank accounts so they wouldn't know about each other. Yeah.
So when you first started, this was fairly early in the pandemic. What did you think was going to happen? So you started this like in May. Did you really understand like how severe the pandemic was going to be, or were you like a lot of us where you just were uncertain?
I would say I was uncertain. I can't claim to have any sort of precognition of just how bad things would be. it's, I think, much worse than many people expected, and possibly not as bad as some other people have expected. I think the expectations are all over the map, and unfortunately the inconsistent information and very mixed information that's been out there has, I think, contributed greatly to that misunderstanding and different set of expectations.
Because I mean, back in May, it would have been hard to imagine, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm misremembering things. It would have been hard to imagine that the HIPAA stuff would have become so significant as it is right now. I mean, it was like a trending topic, I think, on Twitter. Was it yesterday? Was it today?
It might have been. I didn't see it yesterday, but it has trended before, which I was stunned by. I mean, it's such this odd kind of, wonky regulatory thing that most people like, oh yeah, here's my HIPAA form at the doctor's office, sign it, get out of my face. I don't care. But now it's become this sort of top of mind thing for so many people. It's very strange.
Yeah. When you hear people talk about it, it's revered in almost like a constitutional, like First Amendment kind of way. It's like, my HIPAA rights, but it's fairly recent. And also like, it's kind of maybe an object of time gone by. Nowadays, our information is bought and sold so much, it's hard to imagine anything like this maybe being approved now.
I don't know that I would agree with that. I think that there have been significant advances in the state of consumer privacy awareness and demand. You see it with the growth of like VPNs as a product that you can buy or subscribe to. You see it with California passing their Consumer Privacy Act. You can see it in the EU with the GDPR regulation. In Canada, they have HIPPA is another privacy rule. In the UK, they have the Data Protection Act. So there's a lot that's been going on because of all of the various information breaches and things that have happened that have harmed people's privacy, that I think it's advancing better now than it had been for some time. It's also worth noting, HIPAA, though it was passed in 1996, the privacy rule wasn't implemented until much, much, much later. I think it was 2004. I'd have to look up the actual date. But yes, it took a long time to have those things implemented. And, some of that is, technologically based. There have been a lot of challenges in terms of like normalizing health data sets and making these things interoperable and all that sort of stuff. So it's, I think the government, when they created the regulation, wanted to give room for the industry to kind of catch up.
And looking back, are there any kind of bad takes that really stand out in your mind? Do you have any like kind of favorites?
Probably the best one ever was one that happened just yesterday, where a person tried to correct one of the authors of the privacy rule on Twitter, and I just thought that was amazing. I of course, some of the things that I'll tweet, I'll capture a screenshot and sort of do these detached kind of screenshot-based subtweets where I show the world what has happened. And in that way, it's preserved there. Nobody can go delete the tweet and, have that disappear. But, in this case, I shared these screenshots of, the author saying, hey, that's not how HIPAA works, referring to something that Sean Spicer had said. Sean Spicer questioning, whether the disclosure of some information or the demand to disclose information about Trump was a HIPAA violation. And, Representative Shalala responded, that's not how HIPAA works. I should know, ... I wrote it. And, further down in the thread, you have people telling her she doesn't know what she's talking about, which I find hilarious. And when I tweeted about that, somebody else responded to me, that's Twitter in a nutshell.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you have the author, well, I suppose, on Twitter, people argue they don't really bring facts to the table. So it doesn't matter that she's actually the author of the bill. That's irrelevant. It's all about who can yell louder.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And it's just funny, it's a whole human behavioral experiment you can observe in real time on Twitter. And, for better or worse, it's definitely interesting, sometimes funny, and often pretty terrible.
And have you noticed any emerging trends in these kind of bad takes about HIPAA that are happening right now? This whole thing is continuously evolving.
The general categories that it breaks down into really are, people claiming that, somebody asking, like the mask thing was the first big category. But then there's the sports injury HIPAA takes, where, somebody on a team or in the league will reveal to a press, operative that, so-and-so has been injured in this way, or has this illness and will be out for the remainder of the season, or whatever it is. And people complain that that's a HIPAA violation when it's not. I mean, the press aren't covered entities and are not subject to the HIPAA regulation. So if they come into possession of protected health information, as long as they didn't, use some illegal means to do it, like, hack into somebody's database, then, they're not regulated. Then beyond the sports injury stuff is the political angles, where, people are concerned about the, president and his health conditions, and candidates and their potential health conditions. And, on both sides of that political fray, you have the arguments about what is maybe or should be a HIPAA violation in that context.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you so much for your time. How can people find more about these bad HIPAA takes?
The best place to look is right on Twitter. The handle is Bad HIPPA, spelled BADHIPPA, misspelled intentionally for the irony impaired. So that's the place to look. Follow me if you want. It's a weird part of Twitter.
I'll make sure I have the link in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you for making this account. I find it quite amusing, sadly.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for having me on today, Jason.
You've been listening to The Jason Rigdon Show. More information and links for our guests are in the show notes. For more information about this show, visit jasonrigdon.com. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, email jasonrigdon@gmail.com or leave a voicemail at 425-835-2766. Our theme music is Bush Week by Nihilor and used under the Creative Commons Attribution License. This episode is copyrighted by Jason Rigdon in 2020 and is freely available under the Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike license. Thanks for listening and have a great day.